Ladies and gentlemen, hope you had a good lunch. So now we will begin our afternoon program with session 3, Social Inclusion and Integration. Please welcome Ambassador Hatchigan, Deputy Mayor of Los Angeles. Mr. Abdallah, Mayor of Rotterdam. Mr. Alvaro from São Paulo.
We can have them come to the stage and have a conversation all together.
Mr. Halim Bat, Deputy Governor of Ulaanbaatar. And Ms. Das, Manager of Global Practice for Social Urban, Rural Resilience, World Bank, who will act as the moderator of this session.
Thank you very much, and thank you to those of you who are here despite the wonderful lunch. And so we're going to try and make this interesting enough that we keep you not just awake but engaged. So my name is Maitreyi Das. I'm a manager in the global practice for social, urban, rural, and resilience at the World Bank. I'm also the global lead for social inclusion at the World Bank. And just to start this off as a panel here, we're talking today about social inclusion. Actually, we're talking about social inclusion throughout the U20 and the URF. Yesterday at the World Bank, we had a side event that focused front and center only on social inclusion. And we had the pleasure of having two of our panelists there as well. As far as social inclusion is concerned, we define it as the process of improving the terms for those who are disadvantaged on the basis of their identity. So we really consider identity as being salient, identity being a defining feature of disadvantage that certain groups face. So we don't think it is terribly useful to think about the poor, for instance, as a homogeneous category, because there are people within the poor that are disadvantaged in different ways, and sometimes that disadvantage is compounded by different identities that overlay. So identity, as far as we're concerned, is very salient to the way in which we define exclusion or disadvantage. So my panel here today, and let me make a final pitch actually, if you're interested in more of the work that we have done on social inclusion, please type Inclusion Matters and World Bank in your browser. You'll be able to download our report free of charge, of course. So let me start at one end of the other end from me, which is Ambassador Hatchigan. And let me ask you, tell me about the city of Los Angeles. Tell me about the ways in which you're addressing some of these identity groups.
Thank you, and thank you to Tokyo for hosting us. The example I'd like to share is about how the mayor has gone about including women in the city. This is SDG 5 for you SDG types. And I think the reason it's important for us to talk about it here and in the gender panel later is that the research is pretty convincing that when women enter the workforce, they grow the economy, that women in top levels of management make a company literally more profitable. And there's also a lot of research to show that diverse teams make better decisions. So when he first took office, Mayor Garcetti set a goal to achieve gender parity on boards and commissions. So these are commissions of citizens who serve, and also among the general managers of the 50-some departments, zoo, library, whatever. And that's never happened before, but he achieved that in just a matter of months after taking office. And then he went about deepening the approach, and I want to share with you a little bit about how we did this in case there are other cities who want to try to achieve the same thing. So first we decided that gender equity wouldn't just be a separate issue, but it would be a lens through which we look at all the functions of the government. Second, because our mayor believes firmly that you can't manage what you can't measure, we worked with a university to create a baseline of the conditions for women and girls in the city of Los Angeles across all different kinds of factors. And then that allowed us to take the third step. So once we took responsibility and we had a baseline, we held everybody in the city accountable to coming up with an action plan for how they were going to do better by gender balance. So every department, the port, the zoo, the library, every department had to have a point person and develop a plan. And then we also offered help to those who needed it for the most difficult problems that they were facing in terms of bringing women into the workforce. So for example, to increase the number of firefighters who were female, we worked with partners and the fire department to launch a camp, fire camp for girls. So these are girls 14 to 18, and over the summer they can learn what it's like to be a firefighter. So they might consider that as a career one day in the future. So now every city department has a culture around collecting data, developing an annual plan, measuring their results, and reporting back to the mayor. And one of the criteria for their future compensation is how they're doing on gender equity. And as you can imagine, that's quite motivating for city managers. So that's our methodology, and the results have been pretty terrific. We have 7 deputy mayors, and 4 of them are women. We have more than ever women serving in non-traditional roles in our city. So we have the first Latina chief of staff to a big city mayor in America. A woman, African-American woman actually, is leading our airport, which is the 4th busiest in the world, and she's overseeing $14 billion worth of construction. A woman leads our Department of Transportation, and a woman heads up our innovation team, and she leads one of the only female-run innovation labs in the whole world. Our Bureau of Street Lighting is now led by a woman for the first time, and our Information Technology Agency has recruited so many women that they now make up about 40% of computer programmers for the city. And our engineering department is now also 27% female. In both those cases, it's not parity, but those figures are still a lot higher than the national average in those fields. We've also increased our focus on women-owned businesses in contracting, and we've increased the amount of city contracting dollars that go to women from $3.6 million in 2014 to $43.4 million in 2017. So that's a pretty dramatic increase. We've also tried to respond thoughtfully to the Me Too and Time's Up movements. And so we developed an easy website and an app that anybody can use who's experiencing harassment so that we can deal with it decisively. We have also made sure that every single police precinct across Los Angeles has a specially trained domestic violence response team. And finally, when we learned that only 24% of the participants in city sports in our parks were female, we created a program called Girls Play LA and recruited more female coaches and gave discounts to families who we found often would prioritize their boys if they could afford only one. And we've now seen that percentage of girls who play in city parks to increase now to 43%, and we're still working on it. So I could go on, but I've given you kind of a snapshot of the methodology and some of the results, and if anyone wants more information, we're always happy to share lessons.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This is actually fascinating. I had no idea, but then I think it resonates quite a bit with some of the things our panelists are likely to say. So I will now turn to Mayor Abu Talib, and I will ask you to tell us about the city of Rotterdam. And yesterday I had the pleasure of moderating him as well, so I know exactly with how much passion he speaks about his city. Please.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. The city of Rotterdam is compared with a lot of large cities here. It's not that big city, but nevertheless, we consider ourselves as a kind of a social lab where a lot of new things are done to search for a better equilibrium in society. Whether it's the industry, we have the largest port in the Western Hemisphere. It used to be the largest port in the world, covering a length of 40 kilometers, with the largest refineries in the world, the Shells and the BPs of the world. We maintain good relations with a lot of countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. Aramco is one of the consumers of the port of Rotterdam. So we had a lot of headquarters when it comes to the oil and petrochemical industries based in the city, providing more than 100,000 direct jobs. So it's really famous for its industrial heritage. But that is also the vulnerability of the city in the future. If we expect that a lot of these maybe refineries in 25 years' time will close, moving to producing energy in the North Sea using wind turbines, and in the night making hydrogen out of these wind turbines. Recently, we commissioned the largest windmill in the world, making 10 megawatt of electricity. And the city's consumption is 400 megawatts, so 40 of these windmills are enough for the city. We're facing a revolution, really, and that will have a huge social impact. The city has more than 170 nationalities, and United Nations is about 220, so sometimes I joke saying that I'm not only the mayor, but also Secretary General of the United States of Rotterdam. It's a huge diversity. You leave the city hall and you are in the world. It's fascinating. All languages, all religions, whatever you name it, and we have it. So that's really the future of the cities in Europe. That's why when I came into office 10 years ago, I said, we have to create what I call the we society. And I wrote even a small book about how to move from I to we. And it was funny that it was sold out within 3 weeks. There was a hunger to philosophy of how to create a we society. And a we society, to me, it's a kind of a circle in which all the citizens have similar places. So don't misunderstand me when I say, even for the radicals, so take it good, even for the radicals, there is place in my we society. We had in the Netherlands in the 70s a political party named Political Party of Radicals. And they had been even in the government. So radicals, people with radical ideas, are not always the ones with weapons. People with radical ideas have radical ideas about how to structure your city, how to work on women issues, but also how to move in the past from the Stone Age to steam, and from steam to steel electricity, and from steel electricity to the actual Internet of Things. So we are facing really major challenges in our cities. And creating the we society is really a soft definition. It's not a hard definition. It's not about infrastructure. When I go to the world conferences like this one, I see that the focus is on hardware in the cities, constructions, bridges, airports, streets. It's not, in my definition, creating a solid society is about people first and most. So when I'm talking about the we society, I'm talking about investing in human capital. People, or again, the definition of smart city, in my opinion, a smart city doesn't exist. The only thing that exists are smart people. And smart people can make a smart city. A smart people can go to the moon, can build bridges, can build wonderful landmarks. But without smart people, you can't do that. So if you want to do that, then the aim should be, I'm not losing any capacity in my city. I'm not losing any capacity in my city, all in the we society. So mobilizing all this knowledge and these crafts, what it's this or it's this, the addition of all of it gives the strength of the city. So that's why education is very prominent. There are places in Rotterdam where we provide 10 hours more education a week above the national curriculum. And it's all reading, writing, and math. So it's a huge investment, but also taking care of the vulnerables. 10 years ago, I said in my city, nobody deserves to sleep under the bridge. Nobody deserves to sleep under the bridge. So we have 40 people, and we know them by name, that don't have a stable sleeping place and we know they are coming from Eastern Europe, so are not really the local citizens. And we spend really tens of millions of euros a year to bring these people in shelter, decent shelters. And a lot of politicians tend to say, yeah, but there are people that don't want to sleep inside. They like to sleep under the bridge. Bullshit. Bullshit. There is not a human being on earth that don't want to sleep in a decent house. All of us. If someone says that, then he has a mental problem. That's the issue. It's not homelessness because of economic issues. It's this. So we have to do something about that. And it's that, I think, what the mayor is. Especially in my position, I'm responsible for the public order. So I'm the lead of the police. I give the order to the police. If you find them there, take them to a shelter. And if he refuses, we send a doctor to make an analysis. If a doctor gives me an advice that that person is vulnerable to sleep under the bridge, I give the order, take him to the shelter. It's a matter of choice. So building a we society is really working on capacity building, applauding for the ones with success, pushing them towards universities, but also taking care of the vulnerables. And I think that is also a matter of choice. We have a budget of 3.5 billion euros a year to spend, and it's always a shortage of money, so it's about making choices. But I know that talking about these issues means also being responsible for police, talking in a hard way with the police about racism. I put this on the agenda, a very, very hard talk with the police in a public space. It's my police, 6,000 officers. So I want to know, do I have racists in my police system? And if I have racists, what can I do in the selection procedures in terms of recruiting people to avoid that? And if the young immigrants are facing mistreatment from my police system, how can I train these youngsters to work in this system with me, to come with a lot of complaints, and I'm open to these complaints, to do something with it, and to make my police system a strong system that has an access to everyone with an open mind. This is what I understand about the we society. And it's not about having enough of money to rebuild a neighborhood, which of course we do. We all would like to have a fascinating, beautiful city with landmarks, but it starts, in my opinion, with working with citizens, applauding for the ones with success, and taking care of the ones that are vulnerable. Thank you. And excuse me for...
No, it was good. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Alvaro, tell us a bit about Sao Paulo. And you wanted to speak specifically about a particular group of people, which we are all very interested in.
Yeah. Well, so good evening. Thanks for returning after lunch. I'm just going to say a few words about the city of Sao Paulo. We are one of the biggest cities in Latin America, right next to Mexico City. In the city of Sao Paulo, we have a little bit more than 12 million people living in the city. And if you go into the metropolitan area, we'll reach 22 million people. The city of Sao Paulo is the third biggest GDP in Brazil. So we are after the federal budget, the federal GDP, then the state GDP, and then comes ours. So it's also a very powerful mayor. And the actions that we take in the city, they are a good example or a bad example for the rest of the country. And the city, with this kind of GDP and this kind of economic power, has probably the biggest responsibility into politics, climate change, for instance, and implementing them and making them strong in the country. I usually say that any kind of trouble or any kind of problem that you're looking for, you will find in the city of Sao Paulo. And so we are happy to say that we have the solutions, and we are working on new solutions, and we are being very creative into getting things done in the city. We are also a city built by immigrants since the beginning. And we have immigrants from all over the country, and we have a lot of immigrants from abroad. So we have, for instance, the biggest Japanese colony outside of Japan. The mayor of São Paulo has more Arabs, especially Lebanese, than the president in Lebanon. That's what's said by the ambassador. We have 5 million Lebanese living in the city, and we have more Lebanese restaurants there too. Yeah, and more Palestinians too. So we have huge international communities living there. And with all that weight, we have, of course, the second biggest consulate group living in the city too. So right after New York, so I'm responsible to talk or to attend to almost 100 different diplomatic personnel in the city from different countries. And so that also brings a huge responsibility for us to be a very inclusive city and to make those immigrants or their descendants welcome and part of the city. So it's not that we are receiving them as hosts, like we're not a host city. We were built by immigrants from all over Brazil and from different areas of the world. So with that, we developed several different programs to receiving immigrants, to giving them voice and to allow them to participate. Some of them are federal initiatives that take place in the city, as any or most of the federal initiatives, they always take place in the cities. And some of them are exclusively from São Paulo. So, for instance, Brazil doesn't make a difference if you are a refugee, if you are an immigrant, if you have the papers or not, once you go to a hospital, for instance. So you're supposed to be treated even if you don't have the papers. We have 588 cities, border cities. We have borders with 10 different countries in Latin America, and a lot of them cross over to Brazil to get medical assistance, and they go back to their city. So they're not immigrants, they're just looking for a better health care. So of course we do it in São Paulo too, because it's a federal law. But we have a very interesting and open center to take care of immigrants that provides shelter, the first shelter, because then we have housing programs for them, that teaches Portuguese as a second language, because that will be the main and the first tool that they will have so that they can access jobs, cultural programs, healthcare, get their documents done, or even ask for information. So we teach English as a second, Portuguese as a second language in English, in French, in Spanish, of course. We are receiving a huge amount of people from Venezuela. They're coming over, crossing to Brazil, and then being sent to São Paulo. We also have it's like an immigrant political center that we have. It's a paritarian committee. So we have half of the people belong to the municipality, and the other half has to be immigrants, or they're supposed to be working in immigrants' ONGs. And that group is responsible for creating even the laws, but the policies that are going to take care of the immigrants. And that's very important because you have the immigrants or people that are working very close to them, working into formulating the policies that will be implemented by the city. And that's something that's happening only in São Paulo, and is giving voice for those that have felt immigrants, that know how it is to leave your home country or to run away from it without taking anything besides their language, their faith, and their food, because they always take that too. So that's a very important program that we have, is making sure that they can generate and they can also create the immigrant system. And the other thing, since we are a city created and built by immigrants, we want them to recognize them in different areas of the city or in different times or during the calendar. And so the cultural activities that it's not that we develop the cultural activities, but we give them room and space, and we invite the international communities that live there sometimes through their consulates, but they can reach the city hall by themselves, is huge. So we have Japanese festival, we have the Chinese festival, we have an Arab festival, we have the Italian festival, Bolivian festival. So it's like we have probably an international festival for every week of the year, so more than 52 international festivals. And something that is very, very Paulista, as we say, Paulistano from the city of São Paulo, is like we celebrate the Chinese New Year in the Japanese neighborhood that is called Freedom because of African times. So that's very what the city of São Paulo is for immigrants. Like everybody living together, respecting the different cultures, and giving voice for those immigrants. Of course, we know it's like very hard for them sometimes to get their papers, to get housing. So we develop special projects for that too. So we have legal advice, we have people that will help them to get their documents right. We have specific job programs for immigrants. Because the thing is, you have to take care of many different aspects. Because he's not a homeless, he's not an immigrant that left without anything, he's not a person that cannot speak Portuguese, or he's not unemployed. Sometimes he's all of it. So you have to teach him the language, you have to shelter him, you have to help him get his papers, you have to help him find people that have the same cultural identity as him, and you have to replace him in the getting a job and getting his dignity back. So that's what we are worried about. And we are mainly a multicultural city built by immigrants, and so that's supposed to be in our DNA.
Thank you so much. In fact, in our framework for social inclusion, we ask the question, so inclusion in what? And the broad framing of that is inclusion in markets, in services, and in spaces. And each of you have talked to that. And then we also ask the question, inclusion how? And we say through enhancing the ability, the opportunity, and the dignity of the people that are likely to be left out. So, and each of you spoke to that. So I'm now going to hand it over to you, Mr. Khalimbat, and tell us about the city of Ulaanbaatar, as you have said, is an extremely young city.
In Ulaanbaatar live only Mongolians. It's like a very young city, almost like 70% population is under 40 years old. It's very young. And every year, like more and more young people coming from countryside to Ulaanbaatar. Because, Ulaanbaatar is like biggest city in Mongolia. The second city is like 15 times smaller. That's why Ulaanbaatar has like the power of the observation, like it's observed like people. And of course, the young population gives us many like headache for, and they coming to Ulaanbaatar like they find the university first of all. And they enroll to university, and they graduate from university. Every year, like almost like 30 and 40,000 young people now graduated from university. In Mongolia, there is no industry can absorb this kind of labor supply, and that means like unemployment is increasing every year. And we have a very unique house, in the traditional house, it's named Gir. We have very big Gir district in Ulaanbaatar. Gir district makes us like a very big issue. It's an air quality issue. And they burn like coal. And in the winter time, is like Ulaanbaatar air quality is like worst maybe in the world. And of course, like gear is very cheap, It's like almost $500. People can buy gear very easily, and they find some land, and they build gear, and that's all. It's very easy, That's why gear districts increasing very crazy. It's like increasing. And, gear districts hasn't any like the public services, like all this government services. It's far from gear district. It's not easy to find someone in gear district because there is no address, proper address. Because it's not easy to find some gear which is burning, It's not easy, It's very difficult. If there is like incident at a fire, it's not easy to find where is this one, and there's no road and something, and what we're doing now is like we started from 2014. It's a smart city project. In this project, there is one very important section is the e-government. As I told, Ulaanbaatar is a very young city, and on the other hand, we have well-developed telecommunication industry. Almost everyone has like one or two cellular phone, and the Facebook penetration is maybe highest in the region because Facebook guys very interested in Mongolia. They come into Mongolia very often, and on the other hand, this is like an opportunity for us. Yeah, we started this e-government project 5 years ago. Now we are on the final stage of this project. And now people can access all the municipal government service through their phone, application, website. And before this project, people have to go to the municipal office and to get some permission and so on. And now we opened the many small, Horo is like smallest municipal units in Mongolia. We opened the many Horo in the Gir district. Now people can access very easily the municipal services through the Horo. Horo has also like smallest like unit of the healthcare. It's combined. On one hand, it's like government. On the other hand, it's like healthcare center. And we started also this year new project because this unemployment makes us very difficult issues. First of all, many young people buy the car. They do like business like Uber type of business in the city. It makes us like traffic problem, and that's why we started new project. We now want to encourage like a spirit of startups and some IT related businesses. And it's very funny. Mongolians have like very good mathematical skills. It's traditionally it's from like old socialist time, we think it's a very good opportunity. And now we're starting the program which is like helping young people learn some coding skill. Yeah. And Mongolia is like a very landlocked country. It's between the China and Russia. We are very far from the international value chain. That's why we decided to make our young people like very good software engineers, because software industry doesn't need the railroad and some kind of heavy infrastructure. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much. So I was earlier going to throw it out to the audience, and I think we have time for literally 2 questions. If there are 2 burning questions that you have specifically directed to our panelists, please just raise your hand and we will try and get a microphone to you. And if
No
not,
questions.
say, please, yes, Mayor.
To get a microphone. Yeah.
Here.
There's over here, the mayor, please.
Thank you. For Rotterdam Mayor, how many time does it take to become a we society, we community? Because we have this problem, involve citizen to
Yeah.
participate. And I was very curious.
It is a never-ending
We-
story.
We have one more time for one more question.
May I answer this one?
Yes, please
Yeah.
go ahead and answer.
It's a never-ending story. Maybe tell you something about the methodology that I use. We have 56 neighborhoods in the city. So all these neighborhoods, they may organize themselves and to tell me what are their priorities. So we support them with knowledge, with expertise, and with budget. So in matters of policing, for instance, if a certain neighborhood tells me our priority is traffic, and our second priority is drugs. So they get an assigned volume of police capacity a year to deal with that issue. So this community is working together with the police to tackle that issue. And the police is reporting to them, not to me. They report to them. Unless there is a big issue that cannot be tackled on the level of the neighborhood, then they will report to me, and then I will see with city management what I can do to help them more. But if another neighborhood has another issue, fine. Tackle the other issue with another police capacity. And what I do is I visit these neighborhoods myself once in 2 weeks. I'm in another different neighborhood. And what I do is bring with me the city management, the city chief of the police, and the chief prosecutor. So the highest authorities are in those neighborhoods. And we're sitting in a place like half of this. Hundreds of citizens are coming. Start at 6 o'clock. We have some dinner together, fill the stomach. Then these brains can work and start doing some work between 7 and 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. So everything that can be handled in the plenary. But if citizens have things they don't want to talk about in plenary, there's always space to do that after that. It's time-consuming. It's really time-consuming, and we do that twice a year, twice a week. And every Friday, we visit other neighborhoods with another capacity, with mayor as the lead of the city government. Then I bring the vice mayors with me every Friday morning between 9 and 12. We discuss in that neighborhood what are the necessities. And it's based on that knowledge that we address the issues. It's either money or knowledge, or support, or police, or whatever. And that's by doing that, we try to give the city the feeling we take you serious. Your needs are heard, and it's not only the ideology in political bodies at the city council that we're tackling. We take your practical issues very serious. That traffic light next to your school, that is your issue. We're going to do something about it. And just giving the citizens the issue that really well for them and working with them, that's the way we try to tackle the issues. And that will not be over because things evaluate. So the problem of the traffic this year, next year will be an issue of housing or another different issues. So if you decide to go that way, to do your policy with your citizens, working on the we society, that means a permanent action. And my feeling it's really rewarding. Sometimes my citizens complain about the political bodies, but when it comes to the own mayor, they say, don't touch him. It is funny that the people feel really close. They may touch you when you go to such an evening. Yeah, they might touch you. And do you have an idea if a woman of 80 years old comes to you and holds your hand and starts telling you about the Second World War in the 40s, and then gradually she is moving to the fact that she has a problem with rats.
Okay.
That's really fundamental. And then giving the lady the time to listen seriously to that complaint, and there is always somebody with me writing it down, the name, the telephone number, the address, because we want to deal with that issue exactly within 24 hours and not later. Then we show that we are serious about the complaint. And it's really a matter of micromanagement and switching that to deal with making budgets and dealing with political rhetoric in the council, and then lobbying to the national government and getting enough resources. That whole space needs to be covered. That is what I call really being a mayor of your citizens. It's also the willingness to work on the little micro issues on the level of the streets.
Thank you so much. I think the question that the mayor asked is probably can be converted into a question about what would the rest of our panelists think of as being key to the principle of an inclusive city. So I'll extrapolate from her question and then ask the rest of our panelists if you can say in a minute or so what you think as being a core kernel in establishing a society or a city that is that has social inclusion at the core of it. So to start with you.
Yeah, I'll say two things.
Ambassador.
One is that I think it's really important for citizens to be able to see themselves reflected in city government. So we have an incredibly diverse city government. I don't think I've ever worked in a workplace that's as diverse as ours is in every conceivable way, so that the leaders of the city really do reflect the population of Los Angeles, which is extremely diverse. But the other is just a lot of community meetings, just a lot of them at every level, especially on issues that are divisive. People just need to be heard. And the way you do it is, I think, really interesting because it's not subject specific. We tend to have subject specific meetings where we're dealing with homelessness or we're dealing with traffic or we're dealing with whatever the issue may be. But just a whole lot of community engagement, I think, is the answer for making sure everyone feels included.
Excellent.
And just one other thing, which is interesting, is that our mayor is using more the term belonging as opposed to inclusion. He thinks that inclusion suggests a power dynamic. Like I have the power to include you, but it's really more about belonging. That is what everybody wants. That you want everyone to feel that they belong.
I'm very glad you said that because that has come up a few times from other people as well, is that it seems to be a bit of a hierarchical term. So thanks for bringing that out. Mr. Alvarez, how about you? What would you think is a core kernel of belonging, inclusion, bringing people in?
What Mayor Bruno Covas is trying to do is to give the city back to their citizens. I think that in the big cities in Brazil, because of problems of safety and other kind of problems, they went back to their homes, and so they don't feel like being outside. They don't feel like walking down the street and taking the time to enjoy the city. So we're doing a huge effort to for the street carnival, which this year in Brazil was the biggest one in Brazil. We just came from cultural 24-hour cultural outside event. So it was 36 different stages all over the city, and we engaged 5 million people into going out and staying out in the city during 24 hours. So they can stay during the day, they can stay during the night, and activities for the teenagers, for families, and everybody. So it's like giving back the city to which the city belongs, because it belongs to us, it belongs to the citizens. And that's been a huge effort that the mayor is doing. I know it might sound a little bit romantic, but we want to have, and that's true, I mean, we want to have a beautiful city for happier citizens. That's what we want. That's what we want to deliver next year when the term is, when it ends the terms of this mayor and he'll run for re-election. But we want a beautiful city for happier citizens. And we are only going to do it by healthcare, by safety, by education, preventing climate change, of course, and by having the city paying attention to provide the public service that the city has to provide. So that's what we are aiming for. So giving back the city, beautiful city for happier citizens. And I know it's romantic.
Excellent.
But it's maybe
Thank you so
the beginning
much.
of our We Society.
Mr. Khaliumbat.
I think most important thing is like listening the citizens, and we have like 14 different channels we can communicate with our citizens. It's very important. We also have system which is like controlling all this government the projects. It's based on NGOs. The NGOs like evaluating all kind of the projects. They're giving us feedback. I think it's the most important thing is like listening to people. Yeah.
Thank you so very much, and I think that we're at the end of our assigned time. Let me try and do something overambitious, which is try and very quickly tell you a little bit about my takeaways from this wonderful panel. The words that I heard were belonging, we society, giving the city back, and listening. I think the listening part of it came through all of you. But what it also told me was that these are visions, these are higher order visions that then you are translating into specific actions for a city that you want to give back to the people that it belongs to. So I would like to thank very much my panelists, a very thoughtful panel, and also thank you, of course, to to TMG for this. Please give my panelists a hand.
Thank you very much. So all panelists and the moderator, please come to the center of the stage, please. We'd like to take a photo together. Thank you very much, Ambassador Hatchigan, Mr. Abtalib, Mr. Alvaro, Mr. Khaliumbat, and Ms. Das. Thank you very much.